Anybody who remembers last year's UFC Undisputed 2009 remembers how finally someone decided to make an MMA game for this generation of consoles. Well, that's now in the past, and it seems that UFC Undisputed is back for another yearly round of explosive fighting action and seems to be fitting in the perfect spot of extreme sport games. You'll also remember the technical flaws in 2009 as well, like the stiffness of the player, same fighting stance and only 4 styles, and a very limited career mode. Well, good news. All that failed in 2009 has improved in 2010, bringing UFC to its rightful place and making the game seem more realistic to actual matches in the real octagon. Anyone who watches UFC or MMA period knows what this is about, meaning you watch your favorite fighters which from the bottom of the pile to become the champion of an MMA division. Well, career mode gives you that and more. This mode is completely based on building not only your fighter's skill, but charisma, style, and ranking. Completely more in depth than last year's, bringing a new table to the world of MMA. There is so much to do in 2010. Your fighter can build huge rivalries towards opponents to increase ticket and media growth, or just out of pure hatred, like upcoming UFC 114 Rampage vs. Rashad. Just had to throw that in. Customization is much more filled with better physics and form appeal. Accessories have also grown, especially for those moments at the end of a fight where you can see yourself wearing sponsored shirts and gear as of real UFC moments. There's also somewhat choices of what you can say when you're being interviewed with Joe Rogan at the end of a fight, whether it be out of respect, address to the fans, a general response, or complete disrespect. Also, new modes like tournament mode has been added, along with event mode, which allows you to name and create your own pay-per-view event. If you look back at UFC Undisputed 2009, then look at 2010's UFC title, you're not going to see too much graphical change towards this game, which may be the first thing fans have noticed, but they have improved in certain areas of this. One being the fighter's facial features, say Rampage Jackson for instance. In UFC 2009, you ask yourself, why does he look like that, having what you call chipmunk cheeks? But now, when you look at Rampage in the newest installment, you see a much more lifelike figure of him with much better facial visuals, also in characters who needed in the last installment. Also, after rounds, UFC models look more worth looking at than before, without having what I call bubble lips. More arenas and cities to explore, and shows the difference between each stadium design rather than just using the same stadium and slapping another city name on it. The biggest improvement in Undisputed 2010 is its gameplay. Gameplay is what makes this game what it is, which is awesome, an in-your-face experience. There's a high amount of characters added to Undisputed 2010, putting just about every fighter in real UFC into the game. Movement in the octagon have become more vivid and realistic than before, as now fighters have their own unique fighting stance, movements, and taunts. No more mirror-made movement. They are now on the cage action, which means that you can now use the octagon's cage to your advantage for reversal slams or to pin an opponent against the cage and work your clinch game in there. Sprawl movements have also improved, making transitions more vivid and technical. Ground game is judged by many things such as speed and strength, making weight a big factor in holding your opponent to the ground. Say for instance like in UFC 100 Lesnar vs. Murray, where Brock uses his advantage, which is his weight, to pin Murray down and beat the hell out of him. Well, this is where you're going to need to show your advantage, which is what anyone who watches the sport should know heavily about. Always use your advantage to an opponent. If your advantage is striking, then don't try to go to the ground with fighters like St. Pierre, Machida, or BJ Penn. This is very vital in this game, to fight smart. Another thing to mention is head movement and blocking the strike. With this, your blocks will look more realistic rather than just covering your face with 2 parallel arms. Anyone who watches my reviews knows that I love a good soundtrack to a video game based on what I'm playing. With UFC Undisputed 2010, the soundtrack is great. This game has a share of intense orchestrated music along with well-known popular music tracks. Blends career mode with a little bit of both. Music helps the game's aura and chemistry a lot, and employs a way for gamers to stay in the game somehow, which is great and enjoyable. UFC, Ukes, and THQ have came up with great things for this game, which makes it that UFC gaming franchise is here again, but this time it's here to stay. UFC Undisputed is incredible and a great addition to extreme sports. The gameplay improves so well, and career mode being a very huge asset to this game, it's hard to say no, and if you're a fan of the sport, you won't say no. More arenas and places to travel, customization is expanded to much more visuals. New modes have been added, and although visuals haven't changed much, it's still a fantastic game to enjoy. There's a lot to look forward to in Undisputed 2010 and plenty to cover. I give this game a 9 out of 10 for its large assets of improvement, and I suggest anyone out there that likes fighting games, the sport of MMA, or just wants a great game to play, go out and get UFC Undisputed 2010.